Welcome. I'm Marion Griffin, co-chair of Hartford Next Coalition of NRZs. We are pleased to have you with us today as we start with our first conversation of It's Our City, a 12-part series, so that we can learn more about the city departments and the services that they provide to us. Today, our topic is the Registrar of Voters Office and the Town and City Clerk's Office. We are very saddened to announce that Eric Lusa, the Assistant Town and City Clerk, will not be with us today because of a death in the family. We send our condolences to Eric and his family. Today's session is very timely as we prepare for the upcoming election on November 5th. Hartford Next, funded by the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, is participating in the Get Out the Vote campaign to increase eligible residents to vote and also increase overall civic engagement. For more information on this initiative, please visit www.hartfordnext.org/election-tools-information. With that, I'd like to introduce the host for today's session, Frank Settner, who is Vice President of the South Downtown NRZ. Frank?
Thank you, Marion. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us. As Marion said, I'm Frank Settner. I am the co-chair of Hartford Next Program Committee, which is responsible for producing this series called It's Our City. I particularly want to thank those joining us on YouTube, as well as our audience here in person. That is the primary goal of this series, your involvement. I'm going to initially ask my guest a couple of questions, let her talk a bit about her role, and then we'll turn it over and take some questions from the audience, and I'll be monitoring the YouTube chat to endeavor to convey those questions to her as well. Hartford Next, formerly Hartford 2000, is a coalition of Hartford's 13 neighborhood revitalization zones, or NRZs for short, and the city of Hartford. Its purpose is to bring our diverse NRZs together for the common good of residents of Hartford. As Marion said, I'm also the vice president of one of those NRZs, South Downtown NRZ, known as SODO. SODO is a little gem of a neighborhood, about 12 square blocks, in the heart of Hartford. We have a diverse population, homeowners and tenants, multifamily dwellings and high-rise apartment buildings. We also have lots of local businesses, restaurants, churches, social service organizations, and of course, the Bushnell Performing Arts Center. We have our monthly meetings every third Wednesday, and they're held in person in the basement of the First Presbyterian Church at 136 Main Street at 6 p.m. There is also a virtual option for those who would like to attend remotely. NRZs across the state of Connecticut were created through a 1995 act of the Connecticut State Legislature to improve the quality of life of residents by giving neighborhoods the tools to address blighted properties. Today, Hartford Next and the NRZs address a broad range of impacts to our quality of life. Hartford Next serves as the collective voice of Hartford residents and stakeholders working to strengthen and grow the Hartford community. Through its Neighborhood Training Institute, Hartford Next provides programs to educate and empower the residents of Hartford with the goal of increasing resident involvement in our city. Today's episode of It's Our City will focus on city services related to our upcoming election. And I'm joined by our Registrar of Voters, Gigi Feliciano, and welcome, Gigi.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. So first, Gigi, can I ask you to give the viewers some personal information about your background and what it is that drew you to seek election as our Democratic Registrar of Voters?
That is almost by accident. I am born and raised here in the city of Hartford. I live, breathe Hartford all the way. I play, pray, and raise my family here in the city of Hartford. So I started here within the city of Hartford, within the department I'm currently at in 1996 as a temporary employee.
That's cool.
I then moved around within the city and started working at City Council as an executive assistant. I did that for 20 years. I then retired. They requested that I come back and help train certain young council members that were there. I came back in within City Council, did that for 4 years. And when my term was up after that, I went downstairs to the former Registrar of Voters, Olga Vasquez, and said, listen, I'm going to start looking for a job. Do you mind providing a letter of recommendation? So the funny side of it was she goes, well, 2016, I need a bilingual person in my office as a temporary. You willing to come back? And I did. During that period of time, preparing for the elections and so forth, I, all of a sudden, Olga decided she didn't want to do this anymore and wanted to retire and do her thing. So I sat down with very close friends of mine and said whether or not I should go for this, and we all did the following thing, and of course with family members, and I threw my ring into the hat with the Democratic Town Committee, which I was blessed to be endorsed, not twice, but this current year will be the third time. So this is my third term as the Democratic Registrar for the city of Hartford, and my main goal is to service the public.
And we're very, very pleased that you do.
Thank you.
So, tell us a bit about the duties of the Registrar of Voters.
The main duty of a Registrar of Voters will basically is to ensure that everyone's right to vote is secure. All polling locations are open. We follow all laws under the Connecticut state statute, and that's pretty much in a nutshell. It's a lot of tedious work. If I go through the whole thing, it'll take up the whole 45 minutes.
Well, we were talking beforehand, and I mentioned to you that I learned to vote at my parents' knee, literally. I was taken in when I was still a toddler and held up to see them pull the levers and then, pull the machine across.
I remember
and
those.
I went, I think, every time my parents voted. And when I got a chance to vote, I was very excited. So for me, this is really a big part of being, a citizen. And when we were coming up, we didn't have a lot of choices. It was in-person voting in a booth,
In a booth with a curtain.
Yeah. And today, there are so many different choices. So if I think about how I vote now, my wife and I walk from our house. We're very fortunate. We live right downtown, a couple of blocks to the library here, to the Center for Community Culture, and vote in person. Or I walk into City Hall, which is right next door, and go to the town and city clerk's office and show my identification, and they give me an envelope and with my ballot, and I fill it out and right there, and I seal it, and I make sure I sign it and date it, and I give it back to them. Same with my wife. So we're very, very fortunate. Can you talk a little bit about other ways that people vote, other options that people have for voting?
So in 2023, the state of Connecticut changed or added on one more vital piece of how a person can go ahead and cast their vote, which is early voting. Early voting for every election is different. It can run from 4 days to 14 days. So right now, currently, there's actually no excuse for anyone not to vote. You have three ways. You have your early voting, absentee ballots, which you were discussing, that happens within town clerk's office. And the third is going in person to the polling location. So there is actually three ways to cast your vote.
Now, I know, because I'm a member of the Democratic Town Committee, that we have a lot of very active folks in the Get Out to Vote who help residents who are disabled or elderly, don't have transportation, help them to cast their ballots, absentee ballots. Can you talk a little bit about what's involved in doing that?
Absentee ballots actually start within the town clerk's office. So that is their prime duty during election, is absentee ballots. So what happens is a person who desires to vote via absentee, they must get an application, fill it out completely, mail it out, or place it in the absentee ballot boxes that we have around the city. The town clerk, in return, will mail out any individual who requests an absentee ballot, or within the absentee ballot, you also have the opportunity to come inside town clerk's office, do the same process, fill out your ballot just like you and your wife have done in the past, cast your vote there, and it's held into actual election day to be counted. The third way is for those, we have mandatory sites, and that's coincide with the town clerks and my office, the Registrar of Voters. So we have what's called supervised absentee ballot. Supervised absentee ballot is that we have sworn certain folks to go into certain required sites to place that polling location. So we collect the applications, we return back with the ballots for those who are not able. And that actual system, or that area, that place, becomes an actual polling place for that day. So we assist anyone who's unable to do their absentee ballot, or come in, mail out, or a big group. We do that through the services, and that's a required general state statute that we provide those services.
That's terrific. So basically, I can request an absentee ballot either by going into the clerk's office and showing my ID and doing it right there, or I can send a letter to the clerk's office. Is there a way to request it online, for instance?
There is several ways to request it online. I am not too familiar with everything, only because state laws have just recently changed due to the issues with Bridgeport, Connecticut. So certain laws have changed the way that absentee ballots are processed. That's more of a Eric Lusa and Noel McGregor question to give you better detail. But if you are overseas, if you are residents living out of the country, you can still request an absentee ballot via email. There's a federal voter postcard, I believe it's what it's called properly. And all of those informations can be found on the website, either by going through the Secretary of State or the town clerk's office.
That's great. You know, you mentioned those ballot boxes, and there's one right out in front of City Hall. And you mentioned Bridgeport and the problems that they had there. And they discovered the problems because of cameras. May I ask, are ballot boxes secure?
All our ballot boxes are secured with cameras. Have been, prior to even the request. Where they are stationed at City Hall, cameras. Albany Avenue Library, cameras. Maple Avenue, where is a police substation, cameras. The other one is New Park Avenue in front of Parkville School, cameras.
Good, good, good. And by the way, I stopped out front and tried to lift it up. You can't lift it.
Not yet.
No, it's pretty secure. Talking about polling locations.
Yes.
I know a little bit about this. We have how many in-person polling?
In person, we have 24.
So you have to make sure 24 sites are staffed, open,
Correct.
the machines are working?
Correct.
Wow.
So 24 during any election, but in November, we have 25. 25 becomes right here at City Hall where you have same-day registration.
Very important.
So yes, that same-day registration is vital for those who have not yet been able to register for whatever reason,
Yeah.
are moving in from any other town. You have the same opportunity to come in, register to vote, and cast your ballot at that time. And that happens every November, regardless of what election. So City Hall becomes our 25th polling location.
That's terrific.
Yes. So 24 locations have to be staffed fully, must be open by 6 o'clock in the morning. We end our casting of ballots at exactly 8 o'clock, but if you are in line past 8 o'clock, someone stands behind you, if the lines are long,
Yeah.
and you still, regardless if it's 8:30, but you were there prior to 8 o'clock,
Right.
you will cast your vote. That's a guarantee.
Yes, and the process of voting when you get into in-person voting, I know because I've done it every election, but you fill out the ballot, you show your identification, you're given the ballot, you go into a little cubicle thing and fill out the ballot, and then you scan it into a machine.
Tabulator.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about what happens then? When the ballots are scanned in, the machine is reading them and creating an electronic tally, but those paper ballots are retained.
They are. So what happens at the end of the night, the poll worker, we have several poll workers. We have a moderator who's in charge of every polling location. So you'll find a moderator, you'll find assistant registrars, official checkers, ballot clerks, and tab tenders. Those folks are the ones that run that polling location. At the end of the night, when all the polls are closing, and you're seeing if anyone has not viewed at the end of the night, an actual closing of the machine, which is our tabulators, are closed with an end card. The moderator closes along with a witness there of one of the poll workers to sign off. Everything is signatured, everything is with a witness. Our poll workers cannot do anything unless a partner is there. That protects us, that protects the voter, and so on. At the end of the night, the ballot clerk, along with an AR or whoever the moderator places in charge, turns around the auxiliary bin, opens it up, collects all the ballots. The tape is placed one up so any witness can read off if there's people there collecting numbers. We print out 3 tapes. One is placed in the ballot bag. When all the ballots go into the ballot bag, it is then sealed. Every ballot clerk must count them and place them in 25s, a sets of 25. Tape goes in there, sealed, placed in a big blue bin that everyone sees where we keep all our equipment. It's then locked up. The moderator returns back into our office with another tape, a moderator's return, and the actual registry book.
Wow. That's quite an operation, 25 times over.
Yes.
Every single election.
November. Well, only in November.
Only in November, right. So, we have a question online.
Yes.
From the Williams family. They want to know why they receive a postcard every year from the registrar's office at the town clerk when I vote in all elections, asking if you still live here. Do you
Yes.
send them to everyone?
Yes, by law, that is considered a canvas card. So every year by law, by a certain period of time, we have to mail out everyone a canvas card. That ensures that the registry list is intact and correct. That gives the opportunity for the voter to say, I no longer live there. I've changed my name, or I still reside in that area. So what happens is the state of Connecticut, under general state statute, if a person does not reply or does no type of action within 4 years plus 1, which technically is 5 years, but I always have to say it that way.
Really?
4 years plus 1. It gives the opportunity for the state of Connecticut to remove you off our list. You become inactive and so forth. So this keeps up our registry up to date. I know a lot of folks just look at it, throw it to the side, but it is very important, and it is by law that we must mail this out.
I'm curious, if I move to town, what is the process whereby I might get contacted to register to vote?
The only way that will happen is if you go to DMV and you do a license change. There's an automatic, the registrars work off of is Connecticut Voter Registration System, for short CVRS. We get all those DMV changes. If you are coming from a different town and are registered there, you are automatically taken off that registry from that town. In order to register within the town you now live in, you would be required to sign that registration card as you're doing your change through DMV.
Right.
And you do have that option. The one thing that I do request folks when they are doing that, to ensure that your party affiliation is correctly marked. Because what's happening is you could be a Democrat, a Republican, an independent, a Tea Party, whatever, from the other town. When you come into our town, if you want to remain with that affiliation, you must mark it, because if not, it's going to automatically go no, and you become unaffiliated. And that upsets a lot of people when they want to go vote, especially for primaries.
Sure, sure. I mean, that is a good point of clarification. Primaries are held for individual political parties.
Correct.
And if you're unaffiliated, you're unable to vote in the primary in the state of Connecticut.
Correct.
That's not true everywhere, but it is true here.
In Connecticut it is.
So let's see. How often does the Registrar of Voters update the records to remove deceased or residents who have moved? And are there any general updates? Well, you mentioned the 4+1.
Yes. So, Registrar of Voters office, I can speak for the city of Hartford.
Yeah.
On a daily basis, we go into the CVRS system. We have such things as reminders. There's a field there, and that gives us all our changes, all our removals, all our purges, and so on. That comes from the Secretary of State. In regards to death, and this is, I thank you for asking the question, because this comes up when folks go into polling locations and they see a beloved person there that's still on the registry. We cannot remove that person from the registry until we get an obituary. Or we get notified that that person is actually deceased.
Okay.
Just because you call our office, I cannot make those changes.
No.
I have to really do the research and make sure that that person is technically off.
Actually,
Or
that
dead.
question was from Camille on our online
Okay, thank you.
YouTube. Thank you, Camille. Okay, I've got a mic here. Anybody in the audience here would like to ask some questions? Yes. Hold on.
Thank you.
Students. So the first question is, are they allowed to vote in Connecticut as students, and then or register to vote in Connecticut students? And then when it comes to showing up at the polls with IDs, if they have IDs from their state from they're from or the hometown that doesn't match with the Trinity registration, how does that work?
Okay, great question. Trinity College, they are one of the top students that use my SDR during the November election. Students can register to vote if they want to vote within the town that they live, regardless of college student. But also college students have the opportunity to vote within the town they come from through the absentee ballot process, or how they state, because every state is different, how they deal with that. IDs vary from, you can use your student ID, you can use a credit card, you can use your social security card, a passport. If you don't have an ID, we ask that you do an affidavit. or there's also another provisionary ballot form that you can actually get done. But yes, anybody can vote.
Great, thank you, Gigi. Appreciate
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Yep, here we go.
Thank you. I was a poll worker for a number of years, so I actually understood all of this.
No, right up to your mouth.
Oh, like this?
There we go.
Oh, okay. I understood all of the steps that you went through when you talked about what you have to do to make sure that everything is accounted for. A little bit different area that has to do with voter turnout.
Mm-hmm.
And listening to all of the things that you've already done in terms of making it easier to vote, you know, there are still areas where there is relatively low voter turnout. Do you have any opinions about what needs to be done to have people better understand or believe or accept the importance of them voting in different elections, and you know how in a representative democracy things are done on their particular behalf, and we need citizens involvement. So, you know, any thoughts that you have about what could be done?
Thank you, Jack.
That's it's a question that's always asked about the registrars. Everyone feels that it's just the registrar's responsibility to pull people to come and vote. Yes and no. I believe, and this is Gigi speaking, the politicians need to get out and actually get folks involved in coming into the polling locations. And this starts from the lower group of town committees, and moves forward to city council, moves forward to state capitol, state reps, and so on and so on. My true job here as the registrar is to ensure all polling locations are up and running, are adequately available for every voter, that every voter has a chance to come in and vote, cast it however we have the ability to do so now. So, am I disappointed that we get very low turnout? Absolutely. And this is not only happening in Hartford, this is happening statewide. So the question is, why? I don't have the magic answer to that. We have right now currently about 65,000 registered voters. This election will see a good turnout because it's the presidential.
Mm-hmm.
But what we're really, really hoping for is that the momentum continues for the Board of Ed, for the municipal, for the state, and so on and so on. So I don't know how to wake up folks, and like Frank said earlier, he went voting with his parents as a young child. I did the same. I got involved. I can only say is that your voice is your choice. Mm-hmm. And that's the only thing I can guide folks. My responsibility. If you speak to Gigi on a personal level, I would go door knock and pull everybody like we used to. I would say, listen, you need to go grocery shopping, jump in the van. I'll take you to grocery shopping after you cast your vote.
Yeah.
But that's just Gigi. So it's the motivation that has to be out there. It's the want from that person to want to make that difference. I'm hoping that with this election, it's out there, the momentum is out there, but that it continues. I hope that answers it.
Thank you, Gigi.
He does.
Yes. Oh, another question. Here you go.
To piggyback off what you just said, how do you get the residents of Hartford to feel that the politicians care to get them to come out and vote? That's my question, because if you go into the city of Hartford, the response you get is City Hall doesn't care. They're just allocating money to their friends and giving contracts to their associates. So how do we get the politicians to begin to work on the relationship with the residents that's been lost or distrusted.
Yeah, I think you can hang on to it. I think we have to start young. To be honest with you, that was my experience. That was Gigi's experience. When you grow up voting with your parents, it helps instill that, civic mindedness in you. And programs like this are intended to help people understand all the different options that they have for voter registration and for voting. And in that way, we can make it easier for people and also make it easier for them to engage their families. I'm also part of a program called Hartford Decides, which has a public vote for how to spend city money. And we allow kids 10 years of age and up to vote because we know we have to get them when they're young. So I really think it's going to take a concerted effort on every level. This is absolutely not something the ROV can do by themselves. And so,
We get the politicians that they're voting for
yes.
to get into the community,
Yeah.
to earn the trust back, to get people to understand we want to work for you.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't feel that way. So how do we begin to repair that?
Engagement.
Yeah.
Right now, you come to your city council meetings,
Yes.
speak publicly, go knock on their doors, send out emails. That's the way you get yourself involved. That's the way I pretty much got involved. When my daughters were born, I had issues and no one was listening.
Mm-hmm.
So although I had the knowledge, I had to go speak for my child. You understand? So that's where we're at. If you want to see a politician move your agenda, you have to make sure that that's an agenda they know of. Politicians don't know your agenda unless you speak out. So engagement is the biggest thing.
Now, is that engagement by the residents or the politicians?
I'm going to say both.
Yeah.
It belongs to both sides.
Yes.
And remember, you're sitting here, but you're not only a resident, you're my boss. You pay my salary.
Yeah.
You dictate how you feel. If you have an issue within a polling location, you should be able to come to me and discuss that issue.
Right.
And I should have a solution for you, hopefully.
Well, that's what
You
I
understand?
wanted. Yes.
So that's, I can only speak for me. I can't speak for other politicians.
But
I
that's
can
what I
speak for
wanted.
ROV.
That's what I wanted the residents to hear.
Okay.
Because a lot of them don't know that process.
Yeah.
So understanding that you guys work for them and they should be able to come and voice their opinion and have a conversation without feeling like there's going to be repercussions needs to be heard more in the community.
Well, and I think that's a perfect ending to our conversation because that's the name of this series. It's Our City. And every one of our 12 episodes is going to focus on a different aspect of the functioning of city government. And you're going to hear directly from your leaders with an opportunity to ask them questions just as folks have here and have online. These will all be available on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, every place we can push them out. So thank you very much. I think Marion has a final
Can I
word.
just real
Yes,
quick
and
before?
I have a couple of questions
Okay, go ahead.
for, relative to early voting.
I was just going to ask if I can repeat.
Yeah,
that.
relative to early voting, I think that's important for us to understand and know. So Gigi, could you elaborate on
Early voting?
early voting?
Yes, and thank you, because I want to, before I leave, make sure that we head out those dates. Early voting for the November general election will begin October 21st all the way through November 3rd. Those include weekends and late nights. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, downstairs in our ROV office is where it's going to be held. You will be able to cast your early vote from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, you have from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. That's one of the ways of going ahead and vote. It's fairly simple. You're going to go in, you're going to be greeted by the front desk, you're going to ask for who you are, so forth, what polling location, what district you live in. They'll give you the actual ballot. You move on to the privacy booth, you cast your vote. You're then double checked to make sure your vote is cast on our computer, and then it's dropped off in a drop-off box before you leave, and you've actually cast your vote. Those ballots are not counted or open until the day of election, just like the ABs are.
Thank you very much. And just one last question. I noticed that the question really is, how many Registrar of Voters do we have for the city of Hartford?
Right now, currently, I am it. So in my office, I am the only registrar, but we have 2 deputies. We have a deputy Democratic registrar named Kathy Brooks, and we have a Republican deputy who has taken the place of the Republican. Her name is Nayurka Vega Velasquez. Okay? Before I do leave, and I'm sorry, for those who are not familiar with curbside voting, we do have curbside voting during election, during the 14 days, and also, which is located here in front of City Hall, and also in every polling location. There's a doorbell, 2 people will come out, you're eligible to cast your vote if for whatever reason you cannot come inside the polls. Okay?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a lot of information. Any last thoughts, Gigi?
No. Cast your vote. Very important. Get involved. And thank you.
Well, thank you all for joining us. This has been very informative, and as Gigi says, get out and vote. And also, get your neighbors, your family, your friends. We just want them to be involved. And also, again, check Hartford Next website, www.hartfordnext voter engagement. Anyway, look at Hartford Next. We have a voter engagement site. And also, if you're interested in understanding more about your NRZs, go to our website as well, www.hartfordnext.org. Thank you very much.